Hello, and before I begin, I would like to mention, first off, it has been a bit since I created a video. This is because I've been working on an animation. 2, I'd like to make it fully clear that while I will be mentioning protests going on in America, I am British. With that said, I would like to now get on with this video. If you haven't noticed, there's been quite a lot of protesting going on in the world right now, in America, but also a few in other places, like where I'm from, Britain. Less, because, well, there's less Britain than there is America. Less Brits to Americans. I don't know, you guys don't really have like a shortened version to say, I guess, except for American. I'm waffling, sorry. But I guess the best way I can is I wish to speak my mind on this, and hey, what better way to speak opinions than with an analogy? A very sugary one at that. On your screen now you should see multiple coloured dots. These dots are sweets. Now, some of these sweets are poisoned. The poison is not necessarily fatal, though it can be. There is less of a cure, more of a procedure to deal with the poison. This procedure, though, itself is painful, like the poison. Now, the amount of sweets that are poisoned is unknown. The dosage of poison in each of the poisoned sweets is unknown, and the amount of people who can consume one of these sweets is infinite. As infinite as the amount of people there are. Anyone can take one of these sweets and eat it. Now, the amount of sweets that are poisoned are not known, but not nearly shown to be high enough to where it should be banned to eat these sweets. At least. But it is high enough to where one should not be shunned for choosing to not consume the sweets. But it is not high enough to shun someone for eating the sweets. And as I said, there is a procedure for if one gets poisoned, but it is painful. Therefore, one should not force this procedure onto anyone who eats a sweet, for in case it may not be poisoned. On top of that, one should not do any more of this procedure than is necessary, as too much of the procedure could lead to a situation worse than the poison of the sweets itself. Now, you may ask, why are these sweets poisoned? Well, some of the poisonings come from within the production line of the sweets themselves. Some of this poison comes from people who are trying to spread awareness of the poison, believing that poisoning the sweets will make the manufacturers take more notice of the fact that there are poisoned sweets. And now that you hear that, you may think, wow, that's stupid. And that's right. The correct way to deal with these poisoned sweets would be to work together with the consumers of these sweets to spread awareness that these sweets are poisoned, And furthermore, not just work together with other consumers, but work together with those in the production line of creating these sweets to get the attention of the owners of this sweet brand that their sweets are being poisoned. Two things may have crossed your mind while I spoke of this analogy I have created. One of those things may be, what does this analogy mean? What is the sweets meant to represent? What is the procedure meant to represent? What is the poison even meant to represent? And two, wouldn't this company be completely boycotted immediately? And I will now answer those questions. The sweets represent both policemen and protesters at the same time. You may be wondering, that makes no sense. Well, it's an analogy. It'll make sense, just not in the way you think. 2. What is the procedure meant to represent? Well, funnily enough, the procedure is violence. Why, you may ask? Did you not even hear me the first time? It'll make sense, but not the way you expect. Poison is meant to also, funnily enough, represent violence. Police brutality and rioting. Now, the owners of this sweet brand are the government. And work together is meant to represent working together. Obviously. So, I shall now go more in detail. The way that this poisoned, are they being poisoned from within by police brutality? People are responding thinking the only way to get people to pay attention is to make the problem worse, with rioting. And now in real life, this kind of is true at degrees, but when people start actually getting on your side, then at that point to riot and loot is just being an asshole, and you shouldn't do that. Now, 2. What about the procedure? Well, sometimes the only way to fight against violence is with violence. But assuming every person is violent, assuming every sweet is poisoned, is just going to cause more problem because you're just causing more violence. It's pointless. It's just making everything worse. And going overboard on the violence can just kill someone in an otherwise non-killing situation. It's pointless. And then, last thing is the government. aka, in this analogy, the owners. You may think, if this was a real sweet brand, they'd be boycotted immediately. And they should be. So why isn't the government, which has somehow just let this go on, still around? I do believe we should be fighting back against this, and that we shouldn't allow this to be, but we shouldn't do it just by senseless violence. We need to work together with both the, in this analogy, the manufacturers who don't like this poisoning, and the people who are being poisoned need to work together. The non-corrupt policemen and the people who are being affected by police brutality. In fact, even those who aren't being affected. Just every civilian. Because we can't let this stand. I get that, I'm a small YouTuber. I have, 23 subscribers, and one of them is my mum. I know I'm not really going to reach a lot of people. I'm going to reach, 50 at most, and I don't even know if half of them will even get this far into this video, but I just think we can't let this go on, but we shouldn't just use violence. It's pointless. We're just making the problem worse. We need to work together, get the attention of the government and policemen. If any of you are watching this and you're afraid that you're going to be punished for not, doing the things that you don't want to do, that you think are wrong, if you think that you're doing something that's wrong, then I heavily just take the plunge and not do it. You shouldn't sacrifice your morals for the sake of people who don't even have morals in the first place. And this also goes for us civilians. You shouldn't riot just because other people are rioting, because that in itself is just you're sacrificing your morals because of people who don't have morals in the first place. And so that is simply my view.